Hey there, listeners. Today on the Retirement Café podcast, we're in for a real treat. The ever-brilliant Jacqueline Berry is gracing us with her presence once more. Jacqueline is founder, director of My Care Consultants, and if you've been following the podcast for a while, you may remember Jacqueline. She joined me in episode 40 and 154, where she spilled the beans on the UK's care system and shared some savvy advice on applying successfully for NHS continuing healthcare. You'll find the links to those hugely popular episodes in the show notes. Well, she's back with exciting news about her latest venture, My Care Hub. Imagine having a guidebook for the labyrinth that is care support in the UK. That's what Jacqueline's developed. And of course, it's not just for those who need care themselves. My Care Hub will be a lifeline for the unsung everyday heroes out there, the millions of unpaid carers. It's also, in my opinion, a wonderful resource for my financial planning friends who may listen to this podcast. Also, what better way to support your clients? We also chat about the Carers and Leave Act of 2023. In my opinion, it's a big win for carers everywhere. So grab your cuppa, settle in, and let's get into my conversation with Jacqueline. Welcome, Jacqueline Berry, to the Retirement Café podcast. Once again, you're back.
I'm back, Justin, and it's an absolute pleasure to be back. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Now, you've already been on twice, episode 40, which was about navigating our care system, and episode 154, which was a hugely popular download, and that was all about how to apply successfully for NHS continuing healthcare. But there's more news. There's more news. Jacqueline's up to more stuff. Tell me what you're up to.
Heaven help me. Where do I start, Justin? And firstly, I can't believe that you've recorded so many successful and popular interviews. Well done, you. That's brilliant. So what am I up to? Well, we are working very hard behind the scenes at My Care Consultant to essentially be able to launch a new service, which is branded My Care Hub. And it is essentially the UK's first online one-stop shop care advice service for people in need of care and or their family carers who might be supporting them or caring for them. So it's essentially an online portal with lots of guided information to help people navigate the care system and get lots of answers to the key questions that we know people have when there's a care need, and also help to solve the many problems that can arise unfortunately, when people are navigating the systems across the UK. So that's about to launch. We're weeks away now, Justin. So it's all hands to the pump, really, to get that sort of over the line now.
Well, thank you for spending time with me this afternoon. Now, Jacqueline, just to play devil's advocate here, and I kind of know the answer to this, of course, but surely if someone needs care, they just phone the local authority and someone steps in and guides them through the process.
You'd have hoped that would be the case, Justin. And I suppose I should start by saying that there are lots of good social workers and local authorities that want to do the best and help people. But the challenge we have across the UK is that, there has been a huge increase in demand for care. And part of the reason is because we've got an ageing demographic, which should be celebrated, of course. But what we have seen that comes with that is an increasing number of us that will be or are in need of care as we age, and a lot more of us who will receive that in the community. So that's in our own home or perhaps elsewhere in the community, such as in retirement living. And the challenge for local authorities, or trusts as they're known in Northern Ireland, is keeping up with the speed of demand and managing their resources. And when it comes to those navigating the system, so the people in need of care and their family members or attorneys, mainly we see three issues that people face. And this brings me to explain why we set up our business nearly 10 years ago. And those issues are threefold. The first is that the systems across the UK are very complex. You know, we've got 4 different care systems across England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Each operates their own process and protocols. And it is complex to navigate the many different organisations and sort of bodies involved in the care process, not least when it comes to the provision of care and the funding of care across, for example, the local authorities, NHS, and indeed state benefits for people that may be eligible for that support. And the second challenge for people is, I guess, the lack of experience, because most people don't know what they don't know. Why would they? They haven't navigated the system before. Often the need for care will arise at a critical point. So we know that a lot of people sort of first encounter the care system in the country they're living in at the point of hospital discharge. So it really sort of plunges families into this unknown realm of care navigation. And most people haven't got any experience. So again, you know, where do they start and what do they know is correct or isn't correct? And that leads me on to the third challenge, which is the distinct lack of available, reliable information and guidance. And, you know, lots of people don't know what information to trust. You know, you might go online and sort of do a Google search, for example, and there'll be lots of contradictory information and websites with information that might be out of date, unreliable, or at worst incorrect. And the challenge for councils is dealing with, for some, what can be high turnover and social workers that perhaps may not have much experience, combined with the increasing demand and bluntly the sort of lack of resources and time to be able to answer questions and be proactive in providing that proactive support and information that people just don't know about unless they're told. So this is why we set up My Care Consultant nearly a decade ago, to provide that trusted, central, safe, independent space that people and their families can turn to for reliable and accurate guidance at a pivotal moment in their lives.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, you know, you and I have a business relationship where all our clients at my financial planning firm can, you know, free of charge, pick up the, this is, obviously we're paying the cost, but can pick up the phone to you guys to get that information when that happens, you know, so that we, in essence, you're a trusted supplier to us, I suppose, that when our clients have a difficult time because they need care or they're confused about having to deal with an elderly relative or someone they know, that they've got someone that they know that they can call and get good advice. But, you know, so obviously, you know, My Care Consultant has been around for a while. What's My Care Hub doing differently, and how will that operate? Who's your, I suppose, target client possibly?
Yeah, really good question, Justin. And you're quite right. Our sort of core service at My Care Consultant, that's been around since outset, is focused on helping, I guess, members of the public really to access the accurate sort of answers to questions and problem-solving expertise that we offer at My Care Consultant to help them navigate their care journeys. And to date, we've been doing that through an initial free telephone call with follow-up optional chargeable services that provide one-to-one advice. And as you rightly say, you've opted to sort of pay for that for your clients, which is a brilliant step in the right direction. The challenge is that obviously there are lots of people that perhaps don't have financial advisors, don't have connections to our service because they may not know about it. And that's one of the reasons why we're launching My Care Hub, because we want to essentially provide a nationwide care navigation service that is scalable and accessible by all. And the way we've identified, you know, being able to do that is to essentially create this online one-stop shop website that is accessed through password and a login, so it's not sort of open to the public at the moment, and that is essentially being deployed through firstly our financial advice partners. So you know, you essentially can give your clients access to My Care Hub, and then if they've sifted through the information on the resource and they still want to speak to somebody, they can pick up the phone or email us in the way that they would at the moment. But the longer term plan is to essentially make this service available to the public through local authorities, employers, and hopefully in the longer run through central government. Because my longer term goal has always been to make our service available for free to members of the public. But obviously, in the meantime, we have to find a way of covering the cost of delivering this advice and support to customers. So, as I say, the first step in doing that is to deploy a version through our financial advisor partners like yourself, Justin, and then we sort of scale up from there to make it available on a more sort of broader term for the rest of the UK.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a... when I sit and do what I call my forward planning meeting with a client, on the agenda is care. Now, and I continue to, often enough, there are people who don't need any care, but I just remind them, I say, let's just imagine that it did happen. Something happened tomorrow.
Yeah.
And because my clients are pretty much all retired, there's a few ones who've slipped through the net and are still working. But because they're retired, they're of that age where eventually our vitality is going to reduce. It's the natural process of aging. And at some point in time, they could suddenly need care. And I go, look, let's just have a plan. Let's have a drawer that we can pull open, which is marked, if I need care tomorrow or today, I've already got a way of dealing with this. Even if I never have to open that book, I've just got it, a bit like an insurance policy. So it sounds like my care hub is going to be that aspect for it, because it's going to be kept up to date. Because, of course, if we write a plan today, in 3 years' time, the whole flipping system will have changed again. And there, so, my care hub sounds like that's going to be look, this is where you just need to go. You just need to go. If something happens, that's where you go, and that's where you can get the solution. So for people listening to this, and of course our listeners are wide and across the UK, in all the different places, of course, and they may not have advisors and they may be trying to navigate themselves. Is this a resource that they'll just be able to log into free of charge, or is it going to be a paid service? How does it work?
Yeah, really good question. So you're absolutely right, Justin. I think we're presenting this as the one-stop shop for planning ahead and dealing with critical needs for care. So it really covers that whole later life timeline, which starts with becoming a family carer. Actually, 1 in 2 of us, according to National Charity Carers UK, will be or become a family unpaid carer to an older adult by the age of 50. And furthermore, for any of our sort of female listeners or viewers, females are more likely to start caring earlier. So it's 1 in 2 females by age 46 and 1 in 2 males by age 57. Regardless of that, it is half of the adult population who actually will be caring for an older adult. And that's before you even get to the sort of 3 in 4 of us who at some point will need some social care. So these numbers are huge. We are not talking about others. We're talking about all of us. And the My Care Hub model is designed to help everybody across those categories I've just mentioned to navigate the whole journey, which starts with planning ahead. So things like making sure lasting power of attorneys are in place, wills are up to date, and even the more sort of nuanced aspects of legal planning, such as putting in place an advanced will or maybe becoming an appointee for benefit applications. It provides all of that sort of supportive guidance at the very start of what I call a caring journey. And then it sort of follows through right to the point of perhaps where a family member needs to employ formal paid for care for their loved one, or if the person themselves needs care and they can use My Care Hub to get access to all the help they need. And then it follows that timeline through to potentially looking at options like retirement living, which is a sort of a relatively new concept in the UK that enables older people above, there's different categories. Some sort of start from age 55 upwards and others are 75 upwards. And the concept is that you can sort of rent or buy an apartment or a property and live as part of a community. But there are supportive services on site, like a warden that's there 24 hours, and domiciliary at-home care services if people develop care needs later in life. And then you've got sort of, I guess, more hands-on 24/7 care options like live-in care in somebody's own home and residential and nursing care homes. So the resource is designed to help people access their local options, understand the costs, and support them with making sure they're asking key questions before signing a contract, right the way through to understanding if they'll need to pay for some of their care, access to any financial and practical support they might be able to access through a local authority, NHS, or the benefits pot. And finally, access financial advice and legal advice from experts like you, Justin, for recommendations around the best way to pay for care, for example, or, setting up a lasting power of attorney. So it really is that central one-stop shop for the unpaid family carers, right the way through to the people that need care themselves, and for anyone planning ahead that just wants to understand how the system works and maybe put some plans in place. It is that end-to-end hand-holding support service with guided information, videos, and content that also allows users to access my team for email or telephone support from our care advice experts that have been operating for, as I said, nearly a decade now.
Great. So to access My Care Hub, is there a cost for that?
Yeah, so as I say, the version we're about to launch is specifically for financial advice firms. So essentially the advice firm would pay us, and then they would give access to their clients for free. We're sitting here in March of 2024. We have very, very sort of prompt plans to launch a direct to the public version by June this year. And that will be a pay for access service, which will be an accessible cost of no more than sort of £100 for a whole year's of access, for example. So, yeah, I think the message is, if you're watching and you've got a financial advisor such as Justin, speak to them for immediate access, and otherwise wait till about June and then you'll be able to sort of access it directly for a one-off charge.
Yeah. Well, we haven't agreed terms yet, but I'm sure we will be doing so by the end of today's chat.
Yes, I should have mentioned that. There's no pressure.
Well, to me, it's we are endeavouring to look after people in their retirement, and it's as you know, I've got all the qualifications in later life kind of advising, and once upon a time I was a Society of Later Life advisor. I am no longer, but I'm still, I would say, up to date with what's going on. But I just continually go, do you know what, you guys can step in at this point, because there's a lot for us to do anyway, just looking after clients and their investments and their pensions and such like. And this is an area that we want to get right, and therefore, as any good professional would do, is hand it over to someone who may have greater and more in-depth knowledge than you. And I feel that that's definitely the case.
Yeah, and
Jacqueline, you definitely have more in-depth knowledge than I do.
I think, just to add to that, it's not about us being better than you or sort of more equipped than you, Justin. This is a specialist area. This is all we do at My Care Consultant, and it is our full-time day job. We have a technical team whose job it is to make sure that we are up to speed with all the relevant sort of legislation and regulation across the UK, the 4 UK countries. Things are constantly changing. It's a moving picture with care in the UK. And, as a financial advisor, that's providing pensions advice and wealth management and more, I simply think it's almost impossible to be able to also become sort of a holistic care expert when so much of the advice that people need, it isn't just about paying for care. It's about sourcing care. It's about navigating the system. It's about overcoming hurdles and preventing foreseeable harm. And that is how we partner so well with financial advisors, so you can essentially give clients access to that extended expert support within the realms of care to add to your toolkit for the benefit of clients.
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this and you have an advisor, knock on their door and say, have you signed up with Jacqueline yet? Because that My Care Hub thing sounds great. Now, just tell me how it will work, because I don't think the site's live yet, from what I understand. But is it something you get to and it's kind of flow charted so that you go, look, actually, this is where I'm at. I've got, mum's coming out of hospital next week. She's going to be discharged and I don't know what to do next. And does it guide me through a kind of questionnaire or some kind of flow chart that points me in the right direction?
Yeah, really good question again. So we have built the site navigation based on our our many, many years of on-the-ground experience supporting families when it comes to navigating the care system. So we inherently understand the needs and the problems and kind of the way that information needs to be presented in a format that can be understood. And I say that in a non-patronising way, Justin, because bluntly, the system is extremely complex and confusing. So anybody, would potentially be confused, if they're looking at this for the first time. So we've built My Care Hub so that it's directive. So it's a self-serve system where the user doesn't need to know what questions to ask. It'll guide them through the system to get the answers they need and prompt them at each stage. So, for example, we have 4 main categories as an entry point. So the user would go into My Care Hub and select whether they are the family carer and they need support, or if they are the person needing care and they need support, or they're looking for support for the person needing care, so they click that area. And then we have 2 further sections which include the advanced planning, so that's the LPAs and the wills and the bits and pieces I mentioned there. And finally, the financial, legal and property advice section. So you have that sort of as an entry. And then once you click into each section, it prompts the user. So for example, if you've clicked I'm a carer, it takes you to the section that looks at, what financial and practical support could you get as a carer? And it'll prompt them. So, for example, carers allowance applications, how, what, where, who do you speak to, tips on how to apply, how much is it, and carers assessments, which both of those are available through local authorities. And it's not just as simple as knowing what they are. It's, as I say, how to apply. What's the best way to position your application? How do you complete the forms? Is there any third-party support to help you complete the forms? So that's just an example of, that proactive hand-holding support that the site provides without the user having to know anything about their needs. And of course, they might be looking to source local care in their areas. So we have a section on that which enables them to source the top options that meet their needs and provides an overall budget and so on. So it really is very extensive, but very easy to navigate. And I think it's worth saying that we are just currently completing some what we call consumer testing, which is actually where we've got a group of members of the public who are actually using the system and testing the system and essentially providing feedback. And so far it's been exceptional. And we will use that feedback to make any final tweaks and fine tune the system at launch and as we progress post-launch. And I also think it's worth mentioning, we have actually piloted a first version of this product with a FTSE 250 employer. And we piloted that from end of 2022 to the end of 2023. They have since renewed the service. And that was the same service, but it was being used by employees who are essentially juggling their working lives with caring or supporting in some way an older adult in their family or friendship circle. So that is how we've sort of gleaned that feedback and produced this even better version that we're about to launch in April.
Brilliant. Now that brings on to a couple of questions or a couple of thoughts. My first thought is, if you're a financial advisor listening to this, buy the service in, and then maybe what you really do is you can go and sit with your client or the carer or whoever's trying to navigate the system and guide them through with My Care Hub alongside you. So you can be the one guiding them through the system. You can be the one going, look, this is where you fit. This is what's happening. This is what you now need to do. So they're not actually facing this on their own. So that would be my initial thought. Yes, I'll be buying into the service. And second of all, possibly if I've got clients, which I have dotted all around the country, look, there's the service available. But with the benefit of online sharing and video calls, etc., we can both navigate the system if that happens, or something happens that we can both go through the system and the flow chart and get them where they need to get to. So they're still not even having to do that bit on their own. The second reflection I've got, which is really, I think it's fascinating that you've been working with a large employer, FTSE 250 employer, that we've had something, haven't we, just passed in legislation, Carers Leave Act. Am I right, or have I got that really wrong? I think there's something going on.
It's called
Tell me about that,
the Carers
Jacqueline.
Leave Act 2023, and I'm going to come straight back to that. But I just wanted to share some observations in relation to your first point you made there about how advisors might want to use the My Care Hub service. You're absolutely right. The service can be used very flexibly, but I think one of my observations, certainly in the last 10 years, is that there will be some clients and families that initially want to self-serve and actually privately get answers to questions, plan ahead, and do so, from the comfort of their own lounge or study or maybe even on the train on the way back from work, for example. So the service is compatible with phones, so you can go on and use that easily. And then, of course, there will be clients that probably need or want more of a hand-holding approach. And I would suspect that might be clients that perhaps have a critical need and want to speak to their advisor imminently, which of course is understandable. And that is, the My Care Hub resource ties in very neatly with that approach as well. So I think it's flexible and it's absolutely going to be case by case based on the personal needs and situation of the client and their family. Sort of segueing that in to your question about the Carers Leave Act 2023, I'll explain about the Act in just a moment, but I think it raises a question, certainly for financial advice firms and other corporates, for example, legal firms, about the potential of hidden clients in a client bank that actually may not necessarily be visible. And I'm talking about the 1 in 2 carers that are supporting an older adult. And this is actually the category of individual that this new Act has been introduced to support. So let me tell you about the Act itself, Justin. So the Carers Leave Act 2023 is, in mine and many sector professional views, a landmark piece of new legislation that's been introduced or will be introduced by government. And it's all about supporting people that are juggling their working lives with caring and supporting an older adult. And we're talking of, millions of people that fit that description in the UK. And the Act itself essentially became law by royal assent in May 2023. But interestingly, just Wednesday of this week, the 28th of February, the final legislation passed in Parliament. And that seals a groundbreaking new right for over 2 million employees that have unpaid caring responsibilities to be able to take up to 5 days of what we're calling carers leave. So the new Act will come into force on the 6th of April this year. And essentially, employees will be able to take additional time out in acknowledgement by their employer and by government that being a carer to an older adult, or perhaps it could be another member of the family, such as a child, can be very, very challenging. And this, for me, has to be a landmark piece of new legislation that is the first step by government in acknowledging this society-wide challenge.
Yeah, amazing. I think, first of all, it sounds fantastic. Second of all, I think it's also fraught with difficulty for employers. Though how they navigate that, I suppose they navigate it like any other piece of legislation that they have to do. But it is recognising, isn't it? Absolutely, that people can very suddenly start to need care. Yeah. There's someone close member of your family, and I think we're all likely to say if a close relation suddenly falls ill or needs help, then your job's going to come second. And therefore, employers recognising that and supporting people with that and going, yeah, okay, we're here to help. and for employees to feel that they can ask for help and have it in a recognised way, I think is fantastic.
And
it's a huge step forward.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just drilling down into some of the detail around it. So there will be guidance for employers, and employers, I should note, some employers already offer additional carers leave, but many don't. In fact, most don't, certainly in England. And there will be guidance for employers. They'll need to update their carer policies. And of course, people that are applying for this new carers leave, there will be certain criteria that they'll need to sort of meet, which broadly starts with them needing to be sort of supporting what the government are referring to as a dependent. And I'll just sort of quote what they've said. So the word dependent, they're saying, mirrors the definition used for the right to time off to support a dependent. So dependent would include a spouse, a civil partner, a child, a parent, who essentially the person lives with in the same household, or might not live with if it's somebody that's perhaps being supported. Often people are sort of supporting other adults in their family where they may not live in the same property. But it also doesn't have to be a relative if you're living with them. So if it was somebody that perhaps is living with you in the same household, that could be a close friend or something, that would actually fall into the same category and would essentially qualify that person, that employee, to be eligible for the additional 5 days of annual leave. And I should say as well, I'm not sure if I made this clear, but it is unpaid annual leave. So, there's work we need to do as a nation, but certainly, you'd have your sort of annual leave allowance, which would be paid, and then you could apply for additional up to 5 days in the 12 months, which would be unpaid. And the other thing that I think is quite good is that you don't need to give huge amounts of notice. So the government have stated that you can essentially you don't have to take it all in one consecutive block. You can take sort of half days or a day at a time, and you have to give notice, but it has to be twice the length of the time being requested, or 3 days, whichever is longest. So to my mind, going back to the point you mentioned, which is quite right, highlighting that care needs can suddenly escalate overnight. If you need to take half day or a day, you only need to give a day's notice to your employer to do that. So I think that seems quite reasonable. And for me, yes, there's more work that needs to be done, but this actually, more than anything else, is all about acknowledgement. Finally, we're seeing some acknowledgement from government that we do have a challenge in the UK, that family carers, whether they identify it as it or not, make such a huge difference and contribution to our care system, and absolutely deserve that acknowledgement and support. And this is actually really why we're launching My Care Hub as an additional step to work towards providing that nationwide service that is just so desperately needed by those in need of care and their family members.
Yeah. I think it sounds like a fantastic step forward, and well warranted. So, gosh, we seem to have covered a lot as well, as per usual, Jacqueline. Where do people find out more about My Care Hub, My Care Consultant, you? What do they have to do to find out all about this and this great work that you do?
Yeah, so we're a really friendly team, Justin. Hopefully you will echo that based on your dealings with us over the years. We have a sort of open help desk, which clients or viewers that are listening or watching today can contact. So we've got a telephone number 0203 290 3110, or we have a central help desk email, which is ask@mycareconsultant.co.uk, and we welcome anybody to contact us, advisors, our legal friends in business that may be watching this, or if you're watching this as a member of the public and you've identified with some of the comments we've made today about the sort of the role of the family care and support, or you're perhaps thinking about care for yourself, or you need care, please reach out to us. We're here to support you, and we're really friendly, and everything we talk about is completely confidential. And I think the final thing is, as I mentioned, we're independent. We're not linked to any local authorities, NHS, or any other sort of care services. And that is one of the most important things that previous clients have said to us, that access to a trusted, safe space is just so valuable.
Yeah. And you're not there to take sides.
No.
You're not there to have a, judgment on people. It is there to facilitate them getting the best care that they need and deserve.
I love that phrase, Justin. Yeah, that is the phrase I use, because it just so clearly outlines our main objective as a business.
Yeah. So, I can highly recommend Jacqueline and her team through actual past experience. But if you are an advisor or you have an advisor, maybe get them to look into this. I can imagine that my legal friends who are running solicitors' practices, this would be a fantastic thing to be able to offer their clients, of course, as well. In fact, so many businesses that this could be a facility that could be a real value add to their, probably at a quite low cost really, but a real value add to their to your employees and to your friends and family. So I'll put all the details in the show notes, of course, as per normal. But once again, for the third time, thank you so much, Jacqueline Berry.
Oh, Justin, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure as always. If only we had longer. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Jacqueline Berry for making the time to chat with me and share plans for My Care Hub. For links to My Care Hub, or if you're a financial advisor looking to connect with Jacqueline yourself and sign up for My Care Hub, check out the show notes wherever you get your podcast from for some useful links. If you're thinking about your own retirement or maybe helping someone with their upcoming retirement, you might enjoy my new book. It's called The Retirement Café Handbook, 9 Accelerators for a Successful Retirement. It's inspired by the dozens of podcast interviews I've had the privilege of having over almost 5 years and provides a framework for a fulfilling retirement. Head over to Amazon to buy your copy or check out the show notes for a link. So until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.